Welcome to Takeaways, Life Lessons Learned. The perfect guest. I have the perfect guest here today, Marc Badain. Do you feel like you need introductions? Like people know you around here?
Maybe my mom's listening, so go ahead.
All right. Well, officially your current title is President of the Athletics of Major League Baseball. They don't have a city name officially right now.
We're playing in Sacramento. We'll be here in 2 years.
And then it'll be back to Las Vegas. Not back. It'll be the Las Vegas Athletics.
It will.
Awesome. So did you know that you have a Wikipedia?
I do now.
You didn't know that? I was surprised to find out that you did.
Go ahead.
All right, let's go through your Wikipedia and see if it's accurate. So born, it says either 1970 or 1971.
Okay.
I usually don't talk about birth year, but I thought it was funny that there was an or in there. Marc Badain is an American businessman and executive. Currently the president of the Athletics. Previously, he was president of the Las Vegas Raiders from 2013 until 2021, and Oakview Group's Las Vegas sports and entertainment venues from 2022 to 2025. He was previously the Raiders' chief financial officer. How did Wiki do?
1970. Otherwise, they did very well.
Okay. You can go in and correct that if you care to. I don't think you.
Right.
I don't get the sense that you do. So more about you. Originally from Rochester, New York, graduated from Emory with a bachelor's in economics, MBA from UC Berkeley, from the Walter Haas School of Business. Is that important to say, or is it sufficient to say from UC Berkeley?
I guess he paid a lot of money to put his name on it, so
we'll give him that nod. You serve on a lot of boards. I don't know if all of these are current. Say this one for me. Biletnikoff Foundation. What is that?
Fred Biletnikoff was a great player for the Raiders, wide receiver, Super Bowl MVP. Tragically, his daughter was murdered by her former boyfriend, and the Biletnikoff family started a foundation to assist women in need in tough situations, victims of domestic violence. So the organization was very involved with them launching that upon Tracy's passing. And so that entity has been around for almost 30 years. They've done some really amazing things, built a home in Northern California for women to essentially escape troubling situations. And they're doing some work here locally in Nevada as well. So Fred and his wife, Angela, have been friends for almost closing on 40 years, 38 years, 37 years. So wow, it's an honor to be involved with those guys.
Thanks for sharing that. Also on the board of the University of Nevada Sports Management Executive Board, the Las Vegas Bowl Committee, Gridiron Greats, Grant a Gift Autism Foundation, Opportunity Village. Did I miss any?
You did not. There are a few requests currently out that I'm evaluating, and I guess we'll update the bio when I say yes.
All right. So Wikipedia doesn't talk about your wife and kids. Tell me about them.
My wife, Amy, we've been married. It'll be 29 years coming up. We met in Los Angeles, and she's pretty wonderful. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet her around town, but she's a pretty special person. I'm very lucky to call her my wife. We have 3 kids, a daughter, Aaliyah. She's 25. She lives in Brooklyn. She works in the film and television world as a production assistant. And a son, Bernie, who's currently up in Portland, Maine. And he's 22, soon to be 23. And our son, Zach, just turned 21, and he's a junior at Emory University, where I went, and he's leaving in a couple weeks to do a semester in South Korea for a semester abroad.
Wow.
Wonderful family, great kids, very blessed.
Very blessed, and I'm blessed to have you here as a guest.
Thanks.
Welcome
Appreciate
to Takeaways.
The invite.
Appreciate you saying yes. So you and I had lunch, I think it was maybe last year, it could have been even the year before. Time flies. And as you were talking, it occurred to me that I view you as a very rare and valuable person to Las Vegas. You were instrumental in getting the Raiders here. You were instrumental in getting Allegiant built. You spent 2 or 3 years working on an NBA arena. Now you're leading the Athletics. You're, my opinion, you're their guy on the ground. So you went from an outsider to the insider, helping the outsider. The skill set and the knowledge set that you have, I imagine, is also pretty unique. How many people even exist with your range of experience in the sports industry?
I would say a lot of people do. I'm fortunate in that when people ask me about getting involved in sports, and a lot of times people ask me to talk to their kids, they're in school and they're passionate about sports, they want to learn about the industry. And one thing I'll share with them is if you're not on the team side, not a player, a coach, or a member of the staff that is involved in the actual product on game day, I would always try and steer you towards a team that's doing a large scale project like this, a new facility, a real estate development, a new ballpark, a new stadium, a new arena, because that 2 to 7 to 10 year period where you're evaluating opportunities, then developing an opportunity, and then actually executing that opportunity is so much different, so much more, there's so much more involvement. There's so much more to it than just year in and year out working for a team. Obviously, that's a fun industry to be a part of. But when you get a chance to work on a project that's transformational, that's multis of billions of dollars, and you learn what goes into these facilities and the reason behind it and why teams have to do it, the opportunity that presents itself to people who are working for the organization are tenfold compared to their normal job. So there's a lot of projects that have happened. We've always seen a stadium and ballpark and arena boom over the last 20, 30, 40 years. Just think back to when we were kids and the ballparks that we went to and where most of these teams played, and how much investment has gone into these facilities and continues to go into these facilities. So there's a lot of people that have that skill set. One thing you did mention is the outsider, insider, outside. This is a very tight-knit community, and it takes a lot of effort to come in here and build those relationships. And I feel very fortunate that this community embraced me in the way that it did. And I was able to build a lot of very sincere and genuine relationships with a lot of people here. I've only been here 10 years, but this certainly feels like home. And so those conversations with the athletics included very extensive conversations about what that value really means and what it means to the project.
So I'm born and raised here. I take for granted people that move here and feel like they don't have connections or it's hard to make connections. My sense has always been if you're a good person, you do good business, it's a small town. Anybody is accessible. You kind of touched on that.
Mhm.
You say I've been here for only 10 years. In this city, you're like you might as well be a local. You're a local at that point. I think 5 years or so, you're already kind of there. I don't know if it's the same sort of feeling or experience for you.
It's nice to hear that from you, being someone who's as connected as you are. And obviously, I've developed a lot of very strong relationships with people in the business community and municipal community and the philanthropic community, in the sports industry here, and obviously in the gaming and hospitality sector. But it is a really nice place to live, and it is a really nice community. I think if you make it through the first 18 months, it's hard to find a place that you want to go to. I think some people come here and it just doesn't take for one reason or another, for wherever they are in their life, whether they're involved in a project like we're talking about or just moving here for an opportunity. If you can get through about 1.5 years, you start to find your people and you start to realize what makes this place pretty special. And there's a lot of great stories and certainly great entrepreneurs and visionaries that have helped build this place. And it's fun to get to do it twice. It's rare, but it's fun to get to do it twice. So I am enjoying it.
What would you say a person has to have or do or act for this community to embrace them?
Oh God, I would say you have to have sincerity. You have to be fairly transparent. You have to have pretty thick skin. You got to be willing to take criticism. One thing that we found very early on when we came here in 2016 is that everybody knows everybody. So you could be at a meeting or an event on a Tuesday, and by Wednesday you're hearing from 6 or 7 other people. Oh, I heard you did a podcast with Hayim, right? Like it was that kind of wake up call very early, and we realized we were looked at a little bit like an outsider coming in, and there was a microscope on the organization, people, and the way in which we handled ourselves. And the other thing we did is we asked for that feedback and said, if we're doing something wrong, we're not necessarily going to know. And please let us know. And that happened a lot in the first couple of years. And it's happening with this project. And I've shared that with the management team. Like, Don't be afraid to get criticized. Don't be afraid to be told, hey, look, you handled that the wrong way, and then fix it. And I think people in this town respect when you can acknowledge, A, that you've made a mistake, and B, you're willing to fix it, as opposed to deflecting blame or trying to shift it to somebody else. There's not a lot of accountability anymore. So I think when you share that here and show that here, and what you're doing is trying to bring something to this economy or bring something to this community that helps diversify the economy here. Everybody works together and collectively because they know it's good for this growth pattern that we're on here. We're still a small town and growing rapidly, but we're still a small town, and we need to keep that, I'll call it underdog, a little bit of maverick spirit to keep recruiting people and bringing the right people here. And that part's something to be proud of. Certainly something to be proud of for Allegiant, and we'll be proud for this new ballpark.
So I know what I know and what I experience. And like you talk about how it's a small town and like you meet someone on a Tuesday, everyone knows each other. Is it not like that in other places?
I don't have a lot to compare it to. I obviously have my friends, family, and other business colleagues in the sports industry that I can talk to about it. I certainly didn't experience that in the Bay Area. There were little pockets of that there, but it wasn't connected the way I see it here. And it wasn't as collaborative as I see it here. And then maybe it was just because of the size and scope of that, you get swallowed up or sort of marginalized. But there wasn't that connectivity that I felt there. And in conversations with folks in other markets, I think this one's pretty unique.
I think unique in a lot of good ways. You're teeing up a lot of what I'm going to ask you about being an individual that has not had one project, but two, potentially the difference in the inventory of the facilities and whatnot. Before we get too deep into anything, I ask everyone the same question. I want to ask you this question. What has been the single most influential thing or event in your life that has defined or shaped you the most?
I'd probably lean towards the relationship I had with my father. He was my best friend growing up, and I watched him do a lot of amazing things, some good, some not so good. So I learned a lot of what to do from him and learned a lot of what not to do from him. He had a number of different careers, so I watched him do a few different things. He was an investment advisor. He was a franchisee. He was involved in a couple other business pursuits. So, and I saw him have relationships with friends that went south. I saw him have relationships that endured for 30, 40, 50 years. I saw how he conducted himself and learned a lot from him. Growing up, there were certainly some seminal moments in his professional life that I got to witness and modeled a lot of what I do. And then from a personal standpoint, how to treat people and how to care about people, how to treat your family. So I learned a lot from him.
Is there one of those moments or a story that you could share that still sort of you recall these days, or it's a lesson that you
I would say it's more, he had a wonderful relationship with his father, my grandfather. And so a lot of the stories that he would tell about how he had that relationship with my grandfather, Al, are probably more what then filtered down to how he and I interacted together. So it's more collective than one specific example. I feel like I should be lying down on a couch here.
Well, you're sitting comfortably in a chair. Your grandfather, Al, and that's who was friends with Al Davis?
Yeah, good segue.
Good segue. Your life, your career, I should say, now organizes into very clean chapters. The Raiders, Oakview, and athletics. Is there anything else that I missed that you would add in
professionally? No, that's it. That summed it up.
That's pretty impressive. And then
we'll see.
So the Raiders, you were there for 30 years.
Correct.
And again, it feels like there's segments of those 30 years. First of all, getting in the door with the Raiders, that was in 91. Going from intern to CFO, I'm sure there's a lot in there, but that was 91 to 2004. CFO to president from 2004 to 2015. Relocating from Oakland to Vegas. And then tendering your resignation. Did we miss any of those?
No, I think you got it all.
So I was hoping we can go through each of those little milestones and maybe share a story or two that come to mind from those.
Sure. Where do you want to start? You want to start
getting in the
chronologically?
Door. Yeah, getting in the door.
As you mentioned, my grandfather was a very successful high school basketball coach. He was a gym teacher in Brooklyn. Had the chance to coach a lot of very famous people in the sports world: Billy Cunningham, Doug Moe, both NBA coaches. Sam Ratigliano, he coached the Cleveland Browns for a number of years, and then his most famous was Al Davis. So they maintained a friendship for my grandfather's entire life. So we were always a Raider family growing up. And that was obviously some of the heyday of their best teams and the best success from that time period. So it was easy to fall in love with that team and that history. And when I was 17, my grandfather passed away. Mr. Davis gave a eulogy at his funeral. I had met him once before. I went up and reintroduced myself. He gives me a card. It says, "When you're in college, why don't you reach out and come spend a summer with us as an intern?" Well, that's one of those conversations you try not to forget.
Mm-hmm.
And about 4 years later, I was in school and wrote a letter, heard back from his longtime assistant, a woman named Cheryl Nichols. Cheryl sadly passed away recently. There's actually a celebration of life for her in a couple of weeks back in the Bay Area that a number of us will be able to share some stories about her. She was a dear friend for 40 years. So I ended up driving from college in Atlanta out to Los Angeles for the summer of 1991 and just worked in Oxnard. The team was based out of Los Angeles. And what do they say? Your best ability is availability. So you worked 18 hours a day. You were always there. You were driving players back and forth from Oxnard, California to doctor's appointments and picking players up at the airport at LAX and driving them up there and charting plays for coaches and answering the telephone and getting Mr. Davis food and doing whatever they asked. And it was great. You're 21 and you're working for your favorite sports team. That's a pretty big highlight. So went back to college for my senior year. About midway through, a gentleman that I had worked with, his name's Marc Ortega, and he's been a lifelong friend. He's here in Vegas as well. He reached out to me and asked if I wanted to come back when I graduated and there'd be an entry-level job, work training camp again, and then start full-time with the coaching staff. So that was an easy thing to say yes to as a college senior with not a ton of direction. And so I drove back out again and started full-time with the team in the summer of 92 and embarked on a 30-year career. That's how I got in the door.
Yeah.
So a little bit of nepotism. How's that?
Old-fashioned way.
The old-fashioned way.
So intern to CFO, what were some of the positions you held or
it was a very, very different time, both in the NFL and in the sports industry in terms of the size. I think the coaching staff my first year on with the team was 12 coaches, and now there's probably 30. The business itself was obviously a lot smaller. The biggest opportunity I got was probably in 93, the salary cap came out. And at the time, it wasn't as complex as it is now, but it was the first time that the league started tracking player salaries the way they did. And there was equity, and there was a cap, and there was a floor, and there was meant to bring competitive balance to the league. It obviously worked, and it helped the sport grow exponentially, but nobody really knew how to treat it. And data wasn't that easy to come by. But you could dial in using a Prodigy account. You remember that? You're probably too young. And you could dial in and download all the contractual information for all the teams. And so there was a gentleman that I worked with there. His name's Tom Blanda. He had a 30-plus year career with the team as well, was instrumental in the Allegiant Stadium project, wonderful friend and mentor. And he basically started looking at a way to create a depth chart of players based on the salary cap, but he didn't really have time. He had a job running part of the finance department. I was still working as a coach's assistant. So he recruited me. We didn't call it analytics back then, but it was essentially analytics. So he would download all this information and then do essentially a forensic accounting, ticking and tying to see.
Where did it all come from? The NFL?
The league had it was called Player Cost Management System, PCMS. It would take about 8 hours to download, about 100 pages. It was about 3+ pages per team. And each page took a couple minutes to print. I mean, you remember these days, it was a lot different.
Yeah.
So you would sit around and you would print off the Arizona Cardinals and then Atlanta, and it would come alphabetically. And then we would take that information and I would have to input it into, if you've seen a depth chart for football teams for any sport, we created a depth chart with salary cap information and did it every single week. charted the changes that teams would make. There wasn't a reporting system where they sent out to the teams every day, here's what the changes were. You had to go and find them. And we produced this report, and I did it for a couple years. I don't think anyone ever read the report, honestly.
Oh, really?
I don't think so. I mean, we gave it to Mr. D. We gave it to the general manager, a guy in scouting. And I think they used it a little bit when they would negotiate player contracts. So if we're the three people in this room or the linebacker core, we would develop the market for what the linebackers were worth, and you could build it out. So when you're negotiating with the agent, you at least had some comps. It wasn't a complete wag. It wasn't a complete unknown. But for me, it gave me the education on how teams valued players, how the markets started to develop for different positions, how teams navigated the salary cap, how teams cheated. I mean, you couldn't catch them back then, but they did. And there's examples of it. And how teams, I guess I shouldn't say cheated. Some cheated. Some were creative in how they interpreted the rules and found loopholes and exploited them for their benefit. Competitive bounce.
Mm-hmm.
But for an example, the quarterback's always been the highest paid player. But when the cap came out, running backs were 2 or 3, and offensive linemen were bottom. Kickers, I'm excluding kickers and punters. And within a couple of years, it started to flip, and offensive linemen started to get paid because you realized quarterback's the most valuable asset. I need to protect the asset. And so offensive linemen, coaches realized the value of offensive linemen, and the market had been at one point prior to there being free agency and the ability to market your services. And offensive linemen started to get paid. And now they're probably the 3rd highest position group. I don't know. I haven't followed it for a few years, but you just got to see how that happened. So eventually a position opened up in the finance department. I moved from a coach's assistant position. I wasn't going to be a coach, and this was a better opportunity. And so I started working.
Back then, what does a coach assistant do?
It's almost like a chief of staff type position, operations, getting the team from place A to place B, running the football building, helping the equipment department, the training staff, the equipment staff, all the coaches.
So you're really getting like operations experience and exposure.
Yeah, it's an operations role. And those departments have grown too. And there's a lot of improvements that have been made both in player health, safety, benefits, ways that players are taken care of that are exponentially different than 30 plus years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So moved over to the finance department because of that exposure. I had a chance to work with some of the front office folks, and a position opened up. So I moved over there and just got a lot of opportunity. It was a small organization. There weren't that many people. So if you wanted to get involved in things, you didn't really have to ask. It sort of came to you, and then you could also ask and do more. Team ended up relocating from Los Angeles to Oakland. If you recall, in 1995 and 96, it wasn't a very well orchestrated move, but again, a good life lesson for when the move to Las Vegas presented itself. I don't remember what time frame we're in.
We're in
I don't know where you want to go
intern
next.
to CFO.
Well, that sort of covered that.
Yeah. And then CFO to president.
I would say that in that time period, this is talking 2004-ish, right? You started to realize that the financial success of the team in any sport is really dependent on the facility. And the Raiders had done a deal that was a little bit flawed that moved it back to Oakland, shared the building with the Athletics, ironically, and weren't driving enough revenues. It was just a poorly constructed deal, a public-private deal that went south. Everybody was at fault. I'm not here to point any fingers. There are a lot of people that like to point fingers. I'm not one of them. I think everybody was guilty of misinterpreting the data that was out there. Then there were people that just didn't execute properly, and the team and the municipality and everybody involved should take their share of the reasons why it was a failure. But by the mid-2000s, we realized we had to find a stadium solution. Between 95 and 2005, there were something like 12 or 14 stadiums either built or significantly remodeled. All these teams were increasing their revenues, and the Raiders were falling further and further behind. And even though there's a cap, and every team has to spend within a certain range of cash modified to the cap accounting system, the more money you generate from your local market, right? Everybody makes a ton of money from the national TV deal and from all the national revenues that the NFL delivers. But the real difference maker in how you can afford other things for your team, brand, players, coaches, facilities is through what you generate in the local market. And the Raiders were just falling further and further behind and needed to solve the stadium situation. So starting around 2006 or 7, that became a pretty big focus of my energies and some of the other executives at the team, was to try and solve the stadium situation. We spent a good 6 or 7 years trying to come up with a solution in Oakland. I can look in the mirror, we can look in our mirror and say we gave it every potential effort, spent millions and millions of dollars, multiple locations, hiring architects, designing programs, trying to buy land, like everything you need to do a stadium project, we attempted and we failed. And then in 20...
Did you fail, or was there just not a good opportunity that presented
itself? I am a big believer of accountability, right? Were there other people involved in it? Sure. Were there outside forces that we couldn't control? Sure. But we tried for a long time. And there was at one point a deal in place to try and do something in Oakland. This is probably the 2013 time period, 2013, 2014. And I would say that we were close. In hindsight, the deal probably wasn't real and probably wouldn't pencil, but there was a term sheet that had a solution that involved a lot of parties taking a haircut, Marc taking a significant haircut. Marc, you've met Marc and spent time with Marc. Marc was not always doing this to make money. That never was the goal when I was with him, and certainly doesn't seem to be the goal. He wanted to build a spectacular stadium, and he wanted to preserve his father's legacy, and he wanted to build a temple and the best stadium in the world for Raider fans and for the Raider brand. And he was willing to sell a piece of the team at a significant discount to somebody that would assist him with that pursuit, and we just weren't able to succeed. But it wasn't from a lack of effort. I can promise you that. And
who's that effort for? Is it the fans in Oakland more than anything?
I would say it was for everyone. It was for the organization. It was for the players, current and past. It was for everyone that was involved in that organization. It was for the city. It was for the nation and international fans of the team to build something special. It just so happened that we ended up building it here as opposed to Oakland, but that was always the goal.
Did you guys solve the revenue from the venue issue with this new project?
Yeah, I think it worked out okay. In 2015, we worked on a project with the Chargers in Carson, California. So there was essentially a competition between two projects in LA. The Rams and Mr. Kroenke and Kevin Demoff put together the plan that ultimately became SoFi, and the Davis family and the Spanos family, the Raiders and the Chargers, were working on a shared stadium in Carson. And that was a good lesson as well in terms of we lost. Marc likes to say we finished third in a 3-horse race. But the outcome and the experience and what we learned in that year, I often refer to as basically taking a master class in stadium development. We had to acquire land. We had to deal with municipal challenges with politicians. We had to deal with league politics. That was probably the hardest part of it. You learned stadium construction, stadium design, stadium sales, everything you needed to know. We crammed a lot of that into a 12-month period, ultimately lost. And then fortuitously, the opportunity in Vegas presented itself through an ex-player, through Napoleon McCallum of the Sands Corp, which led to the relationship with the Adelson family, who you know well, which led to them shepherding us through the process. And you mentioned earlier about the opportunity to meet a lot of people. I credit Mr. Adelson and his family and Patrick and Rob Goldstein and Andy Aboud and Napoleon. They really, the Raider organization, me personally, we owe a lot to those folks. They were incredible in terms of how they approached it, and they got us in front of everybody and the right people and looked at it as something that was good for Las Vegas. And even though they weren't ultimately participants in Allegiant Stadium, it doesn't get built without them. And we'll forever be indebted to that group of people.
There's lots of questions I can ask about this. However, we're in the era.
Are we okay on time?
Yeah.
Right.
I've got all the time. How much time do you have?
Well, someone has to listen to this, so you want to make sure it's at least interesting to the listener.
we're in the relocating from Oakland to Vegas
Sure.
era of your timeline. I have a story that I'll share
Okay.
about this. So the stadium's under construction. We
Mhm.
asked Jewish Nevada organization that I'm a part of, asked if we could organize a tour of the under construction stadium
Mhm.
for the men's division. So we had, I think it was 40 people was our
Mhm.
limit. And so
Mhm.
we broke off, group of 20, group of 20. And in my group, I'm the leader of our tour was this legend, this like guy we've seen on TV named Marc Badain. So you're touring us around, you're showing us this and that, and we get lost. You got us lost. I don't know if you remember this. This is how I remember it anyway.
I remember ruining a lot of pairs of shoes that day.
Well,
because it had rained.
actually, like the email that goes out of like where to park and what to expect, they said that it was rainy and
Mhm.
it was like when I say construction site, I want people to understand.
Oh yeah.
There was dirt on the floor
Mhm.
completely from the construction trailer all the way to the stadium, which was
Right.
not a close walk. But you guys gave us all not just helmets and goggles and vests, but there were boots. You guys
Mhm.
had like a shoe store in the trailer.
Right.
So we all had boots that you guys supplied, but we get lost in the stadium. We can't get out. I think you had a radio, or maybe you called somebody, but you basically said we just need to get out of the building, and we walked out of a wall. I think we were on the southwest part of the stadium.
Okay.
So this is like the condition of it. Like we can walk from inside outside going through the wall basically because there's no doors. The glass wasn't up yet. So we make our way out of the building. You're kind of looking around like, okay, I think the trailer's that way. So we keep walking toward the trailer. You called someone. We got to some fence. They unlocked the fence for us and we were rescued. But I'll never forget that you got us lost in the stadium.
I'm not so sure that's
tour.
I'm not so sure that's a great story.
It was a great story for me. I thought it was awesome.
Well, you're welcome to come tour
that's
the
how new.
ballpark. I won't get you
All right.
lost this time around.
You can get me lost. It's a very fond memory for me.
Great. Glad to hear it.
Is there anything else you want to talk about from that era?
Where are you?
I'm relocating from Oakland to Vegas. I mean, there's so much. You guys opened during COVID and no.
Yeah,
no
the construction
players
project was a pretty exhilarating time for everyone in the organization. You're operating in 2 markets, going back and forth. You're trying to get established here. You're putting billions of dollars at risk. And we didn't know if it was going to be successful. There was a lot of questions about the size of this market and whether they would embrace professional sports. This was just on the cusp of the Knights starting, and obviously they came out with an unbelievable successful plan. They executed properly, and the team had a great first year, and they've captured the entire market. I would say that if you asked the 2 million plus people who live here what their favorite team is, that they're going to be number one by a long mile. So it was a very interesting time. It was fun to watch all the folks that I grew up with. You heard me mention a few names already, but there were a whole bunch of other people that worked for the organization that Marc gave opportunity to prove their mettle and their worth on this project, and they delivered. People like Tom and people like Mark Shearer and Brandon Dahl and Rosie Bone and Ed Villanueva and people you obviously know Larry Delson real well.
Mhm.
Larry was a really great mentor to all of us during that process and has done amazing things with the Aces. So it was just fun to be part of a project of that.
Like, what did Larry know about a stadium and a project like that? How can
I would say, I guess, look, that's a fair question. Larry didn't necessarily know a lot about a stadium, but Larry's run a very successful business and multiple businesses for 40 years and has a breadth of knowledge and experience and leadership and mentorship that I still rely on to this day. He's a really good friend and someone that I know if I ever need anything, I could call and he would answer immediately, and it would be he would jump at the chance to help. So to have this group of people that you've known for 20, 30 years or worked together for 20, 30 years and then be thrust into that pressure situation for 3, 4, 5 years, and it's the culmination of a 10-year quest to get a new stadium, was fun. I mean, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of stress. There was a lot of sleepless nights. There were a lot of worry. I mean, you mentioned it a second ago. We had done all this work and it was very successful. And then COVID hit. I can point you to about January or February of 2020. So at that point, the building's essentially built. We're about 5-6 months away from opening, and the construction financing was done. Most of the sales were done. Most of the sponsorships were in place. The practice facility in Henderson was coming along, and we probably jinxed it. But at one point, I'm sure we had a conversation like, wow, we're actually here on the cusp of pulling this off. And there was, there was a lot of skepticism. There was a lot of doubt from a lot of places. There's still people that think that there's some sort of mystery and that the Raiders are going to ultimately move somewhere else. I mean, there's still some people who just have some delusional behavior. Some of them are following our ballpark project now too. But there was just a time period where we were almost like there was a sense of relief, and then a month later the world shut down. So it's a good lesson never to get too comfortable. And
that's crazy. Was there any other stadium that was just delivered
during COVID? I mean, SoFi was around the same time, so they had the same challenges. And California was a much tougher place to operate, so they had even
crazy to think about back then. Like, how crazy is that to even think about?
Yeah, when you see pictures from games, not just in football, but in all the sports, and there's no fans, or times when there were 1,000 fans and people were putting cardboard cutouts in seats. It seems...
I forgot about those.
Yeah, it seems a little silly in hindsight, but you were just sort of reacting to the times and what people were telling you and trying to make the best of that situation. I can tell you that the leadership here at that time was amazing to work with. Folks at the county, some of them were still Commissioner Kirkpatrick, former Governor Sisolak, future Governor Lombardo, just in terms of how they were responsive to the needs of the organization to get it completed, and then to make sure they were performing their civic duty and not doing anything that was putting anyone in jeopardy. Their responsiveness, their availability is pretty admirable. And politicians sometimes they certainly get any credit. They take all the blame and get no credit. But I can just tell you from working with a lot of the folks here, we're pretty fortunate to have the group of leaders that I've seen here in the last 10 years.
You guys have like each other's cell phones back then, or is it staff to staff?
Yeah, in this time period, no, yeah, everybody had their cell phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, so as a resident, kind of just, every now and again you read a article in the paper or someone talks about it. It was like a saga, like the Raiders coming to Vegas. It was like a saga. It was like, I remember even an organization I'm a part of called NAOP, which is the Commercial Real Estate Development Association. They do all sorts of programmings. They do education programs. So they did a stadium education program. And even they were talking about, like, at first it was an equity deal with the Adelsons. And then it went from an equity deal with the Adelsons to a debt deal, like as far as financing the stadium. There's so much you talked about. Is it going to be here? Is it going to be in San Diego? And there are rumors that the Raiders are just using that as a negotiating tactic to bid the cities against each other. Then there was the where is it going to go? Which site is it actually going to go on? There was a lot in that.
There was a lot.
And you had the front row seat.
Well, I guess it could make a good book someday.
That's not a bad idea. 2021, you tendered your resignation. So I want to ask about a specific part about that. I looked up your statement that your official statement. It was together the Raiders in Las Vegas accomplished what seemed impossible. That was the stadium, I imagine. Now that the project is complete, it is time for me to focus on my family and look ahead to new pursuits. I'm forever grateful to Marc Davis for his unwavering support and friendship. I wish him and the Raider family the best. I will always feel a part of the team because everyone knows once a Raider, always a Raider. So I read this, and there's a lot in here. There's tenderness, there's gratitude, there's pride, there's sincerity, as you mentioned. I want to ask you a question that I'm curious about, and I don't think a lot of leaders talk about this. Did you at that time, you've been there for 30 years, you're the president of the Raiders. I don't think you had your next things set up yet at the time. Maybe I'm mistaken, but did you struggle at all with any kind of like identity as far as if I'm not with the Raiders, or I'm not the president of the Raiders, like who am I or what's next? Did any of that come to play?
I wouldn't characterize it that way. It was obviously a transition, and it was rewarding and challenging and led to some additional opportunities. The words in my statement still ring true today. I look at Marc like an older brother. I'm very proud of what we accomplished collectively. I'm very proud of what he's done since I departed. I think you have to look at some of the things that he's done and the commitments he's made in this market as pretty admirable, and then talk about what he's done for women's sports. When he purchased the Aces, women's sports were not at the forefront the way they are now. In the last 4 or 5 years, the momentum behind not just the WNBA, but all women's sports has been monumental, and he should get a lot of credit for that. He took a very big risk. He put a lot of money into it when nobody else was, and he didn't do it for financial reasons. He did it because it was something he wanted to do. And he was always an advocate for that, and he saw an opportunity, and he's done amazing things, and they've now won three titles because of that. So it was time to go. There was some accountability that needed to be taken. You heard me mention that earlier in the podcast, and I took accountability for it and maintained a relationship with Marc and Larry and other folks in the organization that still is strong to this day. And I don't have any regrets. I look back on it fondly. I had a couple of enjoyable months where Amy and I got to travel a lot, and then some additional opportunities presented themselves, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
You mentioned some names. Was there someone that showed up for you in that time?
Oh God, yeah. I would say that the list of people that showed up for me is extremely, it's a very short list of people who did not show up for me, and they know who they are. And some of them did it out of greed, and some of it did out of self-preservation, and they can live with their decisions. But the number of people that showed up for me, both family, friends, and folks in this market who at that point I'd only known for 4 or 5 years, still means a lot to me. And that loyalty is a lot of how I tend to operate. And I'm pretty lucky to have the friends in this market that I've had and around the league and professionally and personally. So that's a long list of people who were there for me.
So from there, you went to Oakview.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about your tour. How long were you there? 2
About
years?
3 years.
3 years?
3 years.
Talk about your time there. What are the things you were working on? What's the status of the NBA coming to Vegas? If there's any insight you have.
Do my best. That's another good segue. One of the people who really came through for me and still does to this day is someone I mentioned a little while ago, is Rob Goldstein. And Rob, we obviously worked very closely with when we were doing Allegiant with the Adelson family. And right after I left the Raiders, he reached out and said, I'm going to find something great for you. And a couple months later, he reached out, and he knew Tim Lewicki real well from Oakview Group. And he said, Tim wants to do a basketball arena in Las Vegas. I told him to hire you. And I said, okay. And he said, I can't remember which facility they were opening. It was either Seattle or Long Island. One of the projects that Oakview Group was building at the time was getting close to open. He said he needs to open that building. He said he'd reach out to you around the holidays. And sure enough, around the holidays, I got a call from Tim, and he said, I know Rob's talked to you about this opportunity. Come to LA. Let's talk about it. So I flew down to LA. I spent time with him, his daughter, Francesca, and a few other gentlemen in the organization, Keegan McDonald, just some really smart people that have built multiple facilities now internationally, but at the time just domestically. And he said, I want to bring the NBA to Las Vegas. I want to build a new arena there. So that was an easy yes for a chance to work with a company like that had really developed itself in 7 or 8 years. Was a partnership that Tim had started, and he's done so much in the industry, built so many teams, built so many projects. It was a chance to learn from somebody that had really done it better than anybody. So you mentioned early on, are there people that have done it? Like Tim's done it 5 times what I've had the chance to accomplish 10 times. So we started looking at, you start with land in these projects, right? People ask me about different projects all the time, and I say, well, do they have the dirt? Because until they have the dirt, they really just have pretty pictures. And it's nice to have pretty pictures. They wow people, and they're fun to look at, and you start to show people the coolest parts of the building. But unless you actually have dirt, and then you have the financing plan in place, you're just one more development project waiting to be funded. So we went out and acquired a parcel of land, and we got to work developing a pretty exciting arena/integrated resort project. This was when it was located on the corner of Blue Diamond and Las Vegas Boulevard. And so we worked on that project for a couple of years. Eventually, that project wasn't really feasible there, and we looked at some other locations. You asked me today, I don't know the status, right? I've moved on to the baseball project, which we're going to get a chance to talk about. There are a lot of people who have talked about building arenas here. The decision will be made by Commissioner Silver and 30 owners, and they'll decide A, if they're going to expand, and B, where. I would imagine that if they are going to expand, the logical places to do it are Seattle and Las Vegas. Seattle, because you already have both a relatively new state-of-the-art building made for the sport and a great market, right? So I could see that happening. And then if you're any sort of sports and entertainment entity, and you've seen this over the last 10 years with everything that's come here, some has succeeded, some has not. If you're going to call yourself a sports and or entertainment entity, you better have a footprint here. You better have something here. You better have something special here. And the NBA has Summer League. I don't know if you know the guys at Albert Hall who've run Summer League over at Thomas and Mack for 20 plus years and done a great job. And they fill a part of the calendar that's sometimes slow. Now they're bringing that NBA Cup here and doing those games here. So the NBA is smart enough to know we got to have some presence in Vegas. Whether they decide to expand.
So that's what you mean by footprint. You mean like hosted events here?
No,
I thought you meant
that's at least a toe.
Facility. Yeah,
I don't know if it's a full footprint, but you at least have some presence here. But you want to have a facility here, and you want to have a spectacular facility here, right? Allegiant is a spectacular facility. I've been in every building, and I would put it up against anywhere. Maybe there are some that are more expensive. Maybe there are some that are bigger. But when you talk about the combination of the market, the location, the design, the tying it to the brand, what it's done for this market, I don't think there's anything close. And I'm sure there's some people that want to make the argument, but they're just wrong.
I don't know how anyone could think about even making an argument. There's no question.
Look, Dallas' stadium is special. What Jerry built there is special. It's 17 years old. Yeah, I'm just talking about in the grand scheme. If you're looking at,
I thought you were saying that someone trying to make the argument that Allegiant isn't positive in a major way for this market.
I don't listen to those people.
Yeah,
those people are
there's
ignorant.
nothing to talk about.
They don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. But I'm just saying when you juxtapose that versus other facilities, and then when you start talking about what John and the Athletics designed, I was fortunate to walk into a pretty completed product and the location and what they've designed. And when Major League Baseball looks at what their new ballpark is going to be in this market, on the strip, in that location, again, it's sort of checkmate. So if you're a basketball team or you're the NBA, and this is not meant to besmirch T-Mobile. I'm a season ticket holder of the Knights. I think it's a great facility, but it's now 10 years old, and it wasn't necessarily built expecting to have two teams and to be competitive with $2 billion facilities around the world. So I'm sure at some point the folks who are making the decision are going to say, is T-Mobile ready for the teams? Is T-Mobile ready for two teams? Is T-Mobile suitable for the NBA? Can we fix it up? Can we put a couple $100 million into it? What does that do to it? Or do we need to be investigating another location? Those were all issues we were dealing with when we were working on this project. But as I like to say, it's the next watch's problem.
So now you're at the Athletics. You're about to celebrate your first year anniversary there. How did that opportunity even come up for you?
Well, it's going to sound like a broken record, but this one also came to me from Rob Goldstein. So Rob had developed a friendship with Sandy Dean, a relationship with Sandy Dean. Sandy is the vice chair of the Athletics. He's worked for the Fisher family for decades and is one of the main architects of the deal, not an actual architect, but one of the people who actually put this deal together with the folks in Nevada and with Las Vegas. And Rob reached out to Sandy when the position became open. He said, "Why don't you talk to Marc?" and he brokered a couple of conversations about a little over a year ago. I spent some time with Sandy. I spent some time with John. I spent some time with a gentleman named Ross Bowen, who's at the time was VP of Ballpark Development, now SVP of Business Development and Strategy, but also working very closely on the ballpark. The general councilwoman named Delonra Ellis. Just got a chance to meet some people that I didn't know in the organization.
I was going to ask, because you guys were co-tenants in Oakland
Yeah, it was.
together.
Look, it wasn't.
But are these different people in the same organization?
There are a few people there that I worked closely with. You obviously shared a building, so you knew the operations people, maybe the ticketing people, but I didn't know that many people.
You guys didn't get along, if I recall.
Well, look, it wasn't it wasn't the healthiest of relationships, but I'm not afraid to admit I was wrong about that. And I had an opportunity to get to know these folks. And it's a pretty special group of people. And John's been incredible to work for. And wants to build something spectacular and special, has certainly designed that. And then going beyond the design, how that experience is going to translate into the ballpark is something we're spending a lot of time on, and he's very focused on. So yeah, that relationship was a little frosty, and I understand it. And anytime you have two people sharing a building, it's never going to be, unless it's common ownership. And even in some situations with common ownership, the teams can tend to have some challenges. We had them, but was able to put that behind me pretty quickly.
So you talked about, you came to the opportunity that's pretty well designed and whatnot. What are you doing day to day? What's your job?
There's two main priorities, obviously involved somewhat on the construction and just a part of that process. But I also know where I add value and where I'm just another person that's making things more complicated. The revenue generation for the building is a primary responsibility of mine. So selling sponsorships, putting together a suite and ticket product, booking other events in the ballpark. Those are all things that John has tasked me with, and building the organization. The organization, when I got there a year ago, was about 52 people, which is a small operation. Most MLB teams probably have 200 people. This is not including the baseball side, the scouts and the manager and the team. This is just people on the business side. So it was evaluating the size of the staff, the existing people who were there, some of which were very eager to get here, some of which still have to go back and forth for a year or two, and then augmenting that staff and building out a leadership team and bringing those folks to town, or hiring folks in Las Vegas to join the organization. We've added about 24 positions. We have a couple of sales agencies as partners. So we have headcount. They're just not necessarily our payroll. And you mentioned it at the beginning, sort of, I don't remember the term you used, but the insider, right? Somebody who can
You're the inside guy.
Well,
you're the guy on the ground.
That has some positive connotations and maybe some negative connotations, but just
I was
making
going
sure
more with positive.
I know you were. Making sure that the organization knows how to ingratiate themselves into this community, right? And one of the things we talk about all the time is it's not necessarily how much money you're spending. While that's important, and there are certain minimum requirements that I know we'll blow through, it's about being present. It's about being present at all these different events and touching all the different organizations in town that need assistance. And
you said, or like you talked earlier, how the community embraced you. That's the sort of beat I was going. Like I mentioned to you earlier, we just expanded into Salt Lake City.
Right.
One of the first thing you do is you hire someone in Salt Lake City. We're not going to fly there thinking we're going to, take over and run amok on everyone who lives there. The same thing exists in architecture. Our local architects get peeved if an outside architect comes in, and I actually think that there's statute that they have to work. You have to find a local architect. There's good reason for that because they know what's here, who's here, how things operate here. I thought it was very smart when, again, there's a saga around the Athletics, just like there was with the Raiders, and there's what's actually happening and probably what gets out in the press and what people interpret is happening and maybe even think that it's some kind of conspiracy or whatnot. But the press, just as a local, it wasn't going favorably. And then they hired you, and it's like, oh, that's a smart thing to do because you've done it before. You've put the team on the rails, the people. That was sort of my interpretation of what was in the press before they hired you.
I certainly appreciate the kind words, but as you know, it takes thousands of people, not one person. And I would
But did they
also
have someone that was like the face of it?
no, they
Yeah,
really
okay.
didn't. Yeah, obviously that there's some accuracy to it, but I'm not egotistical enough to stand here and accept that and say that that's the reason. I would look at the actions of the organization and the actions of John and his family in terms of the commitment they've made and the delivery of those commitments. And we experienced the same things with the process of Allegiant on delivering what you promised. And John has delivered on what he's promised and made a financial commitment. I don't know the exact numbers, but when you look at the nominal dollars of equity that are being put into this ballpark, I would say besides Mr. Kroenke, maybe Mr. Ballmer at Intuit Dome, there aren't too many owners that have put as much personal equity into a project. That's significant. The design is significant. The involvement in the community is significant. The moves we're making on the field and signing the players are significant. In the last 2 off seasons, the organization has committed $300 million in guarantees to 4 players. And that was always the desire, was to retain the core. But if the economics dictated that you didn't have the ability to do that, you weren't just going to throw money at it. You weren't just going to throw hundreds of millions of dollars at something that had no chance of success. So you look at the actual facts, not the noise. And if you can look through the noise and you can look at actually what's occurred, I think it's very admirable what the organization did well before I got there. And then I'm the benefactor of a lot of things that came before me. And hopefully I add value where I add value.
So I want to talk more about the facility. I keep talking about this ballpark. And I'm going to frame this as, remember, I'm a real estate guy, so I want to geek out on that. You were involved in building an arena, which is 65,000.
That's a stadium.
Sorry, stadium, okay. 65,000 seats. Oakview was a arena, 20,000 seats.
Ballpark.
This one is 33,000.
Ballpark.
And it's called a ballpark?
It would be called a ballpark.
It's not called a stadium or an arena or...
I would call it a ballpark.
Okay.
We'll see. Eventually there'll be a naming rights partner. They might have a say in what they want to call it, but we would refer to it as a ballpark.
Okay. So I want to talk about the actual ballpark and then zoom out. You were kind of talking about it, like the inventory in Vegas between arenas and stadiums and facilities like this for... You have the core tenant and sport, and then everything else that goes in there. So I want to, big question.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
I don't know. That's a lot of topics. Where do you want to start? You want to talk about the building?
First? Yeah. Tell me about the building. Tropicana
in Las Vegas Boulevard.
Unbelievable.
Tore down the Tropicana. A lot of history there. We'll find some ways to honor that history, and maybe there'll be some that will be very outward facing, and then maybe there'll be a few little Easter eggs throughout the building. The building was designed by an architect named Bjarke Ingels, who was just a renowned architect. He had never done a sports facility. So when John was looking for something spectacular, he had a lot of submissions to choose from, and this one really blows the socks off of anything I've ever seen. And then the architect of record, which is the architect that does a lot of the interior and more of the detail work, is HNTB. So at Allegiant, it was David Manico as the design architect. HNTB did architect of record. And so now you have Bjarke Ingels. And they've just designed something that is, to me, architecturally significant. People have compared it to the Sydney Opera House. I don't know if that was done on purpose. I just was fortunate enough to take a trip to Sydney over the holidays, and it does look very similar. And that's...
I read armadillo.
Well, I don't know where that came from, but there's no armadillo in Nevada.
Like a layered shell.
Yeah, but if you actually take a look at it and juxtapose it with the Sydney Opera House, there's a lot of similarities. And that's a pretty special building to be compared to. The building itself is pretty small. It's about 965,000 square feet. To put that in context, most arenas are about 650 to 1 million. Most baseball ballparks are 1 million to 1.5 million. I think Texas is 1.7 million, Globe Life. And most football stadiums are, the smaller ones are 1.5 million, 6 on up to 3 million plus, like SoFi and Dallas Stadium. So we're essentially...
What's Allegiant?
Allegiant's about 1.75 million. And Allegiant was on the small side
Mhm.
compared to some of the newer facilities, and you'll see
Is
that
that a
continues.
land constraint thing?
Well, I think it's more an experience and a cost standpoint. Most of the buildings that you're starting to see be developed are shrinking a little bit. The need for an 80,000 seat football stadium or a 50,000 seat baseball ballpark or a 25,000 seat arena, it's tough. The bigger you get, the more expensive it is, and the most expensive seats are the cheapest ones, the ones in the highest deck. And those are the hardest to sell. People don't necessarily want to go to every game in that experience. They might go to some, but those are the hardest tickets to sell. So you're starting to see the football stadiums that are designed be a little smaller. Our building smaller. The building that was just released in Tampa for the Rays will be smaller. So some of it was that for the ballpark. We're on a 9-acre plot of land on approximately 35-acre campus. So there were some limitations on how big we could go. We certainly could have gone more vertical, but would that have been the best product or the best seat? Probably not. So when you come in and you'll do a tour of the experience center, we'll show you all the different products and how the building is designed, and you can look at the sections of the stadium. You can see it's almost built like an arena. So, for example, in some ballparks, there might be 35 to 40 rows in the first deck. And I think our first deck has 22, maybe 24 rows at its highest. So it's a lot tighter and it's a lot narrower, and then they stack on top of it. So the upper row, the last row in our upper deck is the first row in most upper decks in most ballparks. So it's just a tighter, smaller ballpark. You could compare it to some of the sight lines in a ballpark like Wrigley or Fenway Park, where they condensed it and brought it in. So it's good for baseball. It's also good for other events. You have a much tighter footprint. We're not going to have 60,000 seat concerts there. We can't put that many people there. But we can do 30,000 seat events between
T-Mobile's 18.
T-Mobile's 18.
So you're 33.
We're 33 with standing room only seats around different
So
plaza
30
areas. It's 30
seated,
fixed.
30 fixed, and then Allegiant 65.
Legion is about 62.5 with a couple thousand.
Is there anything else? So we have what else? We have Grand Garden Arena.
Grand Garden Arena is what, 12, 13. Ultra Arena is probably 10 to 12.
So you're filling a spot that. Is there anything else that's in the 30?
Here?
Yeah.
Well, I guess Sam Boyd was, but they can't use that anymore. But it's a great piece of infrastructure for the city.
When I went to college, that was my game day experience for UNLV. Sam Boyd, yeah.
Look, I'm sure you had a blast, right?
Because I didn't know anything different.
Didn't know anything different. That was the experience.
That's right.
Now you'll have a different experience. Now you have a different experience at Allegiant. Now you'll have a different experience at our ballpark, right? Things evolve.
So what other events fit a 30 that could come here that can't come here now because there is no 30?
Well, I think you could probably do some existing events, some existing sports. We can't do football. We're not going to be able to wedge a football field in there. So football is not an option, but other sports can come there. Concerts can come there. One thing I think you'll start to see is just call it larger citywide events. So you saw it when WrestleMania came here, and they had events at multiple venues. So whether that IP exists right now in the form of existing content, or whether that content develops over time and you can use all of the facilities in a particular weekend, this is the type of market that can handle that.
You're blowing my mind right now.
Well, I wouldn't say it's not that complicated. It's just utilizing the infrastructure that exists.
I never thought about
well, do an event at Allegiant, do an event at the ballpark, do an event at T-Mobile, do an event at Ultra. You could have 5-6 events going on all at once. I don't know how much of that type of super weekend exists right now, but if any market can put that together. So let's play with this
for a second. Yeah. So let's say the Super Bowl comes back to Allegiant. What do you guys do with your ballpark?
You'd probably...
like a watch party?
You would... I can tell you, I don't know if I should be telling the bid package will include the use of our ballpark for potentially something that the NFL needs, like a media center or something like that. But if the building's available, you probably do a concert would be the smartest use of that. Might be a corporate event. The NFL might just come in and take it from us, and that's sometimes just how they operate. But utilizing it for the best need for this market. But when you talk about WrestleMania, right? And now TKO and Dana, they're getting into boxing.
Mm-hmm.
You could see a situation where you had WrestleMania at Allegiant, you had a boxing event at T-Mobile, and you had a UFC event at our ballpark, vice versa, flip it around. But you have all these facilities, you have the infrastructure in place to support it with the hotel rooms, you have the connectivity pieces, you have the adjacency. That to me just seems like something that this is the market that can pull something like that off. This is the market that can get all the people that need to make the decisions in one room in a couple of hours and say, we're going to go and either attract this, create this, or create something new and bring it all here. So I guess it's only limited by the imagination of the entrepreneurs in this market and the business folks in this market who want to put those things together. And now you add a new piece of infrastructure in place that can help support it and promote it.
And I'm thinking about it. They're all there like at Tropicana and South, right? Is there anything north? So MGM's there, T-Mobile's behind New York kind of.
Right.
You're there on that corner. Michelob
Legion's
is
right
inside
there.
of Mandalay Bay.
Yep.
Allegiant's right there.
Grand Garden Arena's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything's
is
all
there
in that
anything north of
walking
that
sector.
corner? No.
Any facilities that large?
Yeah, that large.
No, there's a lot of 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 seat venues that will also be full. You'll have music. You'll have musical acts.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to talk about events of that significance and the corporate presence that brings, they're all looking for large scale facilities to host events for either their employees, their partners, their sponsors, rewarding their best sellers. Obviously, This is a city built on convention and business that way. So this is another facility that's available for that use.
That's pretty exciting.
Not bad.
I read some things. I don't know if they're true. I'm going to read them to you, and I want your reaction.
Go.
The Athletics franchise has not played in a new stadium of their own without another sport team tenant since 1909.
I believe that's true. We didn't really get a chance to talk about the ballpark. You just sort of
sorry. Let's go back to that. I got so excited about this.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. Go back.
Let's go back to the ballpark.
30,000 seats, an incredible emphasis on premium and hospitality for all the patrons. So not just the folks that are paying the most expensive ticket, but we created a lot of different pockets in the venue that people can, I don't want to say experiment with, but have a different type of experience when they come to the game. There are some people that are going to want to sit in their seat for 9 innings, watch the game, have a beer, have a hot dog. Some of them, some people just like sitting and watching a ball game. And then there are people that are going to want to walk around and see different parts of the ballpark. We have an area out in left field with some incredible access to the bullpen that doesn't exist in any other ballpark. You'll be able to watch the pitchers warming up and look through a fence and see the action on the field. We have a club out in right field that has a see-through fence that you can watch the game from that area. You have this gigantic entry platform coming in off the Northwest Plaza, similar to the Toshiba Plaza at T-Mobile, where the majority of the fans and patrons make it through. But we'll have some activation areas, and you can stand there, and there's not just outfield seats. There's an area to experiment with and do some things from a fan engagement standpoint, right? A Saturday game against the Yankees is going to be one experience. A Tuesday day game in August against a less attractive opponent, you're going to want to do some fun things in the ballpark. We're going to have to reinvent ourselves. We're going to have to be very engaged in the community. We're going to have to do some fun things and make it worthy of Vegas, worthy of the entertainment dollar here. And those ideas are being developed right now. A couple of cool congregating areas where you might otherwise put seats. So sacrifice seats, but more for areas where people can just sort of go up, get something to eat, have a beer, watch a little bit of the game. The food program is being curated by a gentleman named Will Gadara. Do you know that name? So Will is a successful restaurateur. He was the proprietor of 11 Madison Park, which at one point won the #1 restaurant in the world for a number of years. He's an executive producer of The Bear, the television show. So that's meant to replicate some of his experience. And then he wrote a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, which, if you haven't read, is a really good read in terms of how to make experiences special. And this market knows how to do it. And obviously we can tap into that talent, but just some of the ways that you can treat your customer, and they're not big things. We talked about being present earlier, similar things, like just little things that you can do for your customer, just as you know them and you know their preferences, and the manner in which, I don't want to say old Vegas because that's sort of a stereotype that people throw out, but the way people in this city have learned and taught and experienced hospitality, bringing that to the ballpark as well. So we're pretty excited about it. It's going to be an absolutely beautiful building to add to the skyline, and then it's going to be a great experience for the fans that are in the ballpark.
I'll make a confession.
Sure.
I'm born and raised in Las Vegas,
Mhm.
so my ballpark experience is up in Summerlin.
That's a great ballpark too.
I went to maybe 2 Dodger games in my life.
Mhm.
I find in conversation it's easy just to throw away this ballpark thing.
What do you mean?
From the sense of like, I don't think I wouldn't myself be a season ticket holder because I don't love baseball that much, and it's a lot of games. And it's kind of like, well, who's going to want to go to a game in Vegas? Now, we've heard that the same about hockey and the same about football.
Mhm.
And so we learned like there has to be something there. And hearing you talk about all this, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we know it's a competitive landscape, and we know we have to put an incredible product both on the field and off the field. And we'll experiment with some things, and some things will land and some things will fail. John's pretty open-minded about that and comes up with a lot of great ideas. One of the things he likes to say is, my job is to come up with 20 ideas, and your job is to tell me which 18 are stupid. And I would say he has a better batting average than that. But one of the lines we use is, you got to treat every day like it's opening day. And that experience needs to be pretty special. So we also know we're going to have a lot of unique visitors to the ballpark. We're going to have a lot of people who are coming there for one game. We're going to have a lot of visitors to Las Vegas that are going to take in the ballpark for one game. We want that experience to be special.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas
is
really built for that, because you have people coming here for many other things. It's kind of like, well, what else is going on? Oh, let's go
check out some of the ball games.
Check out, and there's more to do than just sit in your seat for 9 innings.
Correct. There'll be some activations throughout the ballpark that people can engage with.
That's really cool.
A significant art program. The family is big supporters of the arts, and so there's going to be that added to the building. So yeah, there'll be a lot of fun things that will develop over the next couple of years.
I'm going to jump to a question, then we'll go back to these. We'll go back to these things.
Okay.
What is something about your job that makes you giddy, that you almost can't believe that you get to do this as work?
Going out to the site's pretty fun. I'm not there every day. I would say I get out there once or twice a week, and that never disappoints. It didn't disappoint the last time. It didn't disappoint when I was working for Oakview and went to some of their projects. When you actually get out to the site and you put on the boots and you put on the hard hat and you walk around and you see the men and women of the workforce, we like to say, like, those people have real jobs. You know, what we do pales in comparison, and especially when you start to see some of the vertical work and the steel work and the iron workers and the laborers and what they actually do every day. It's hard not to be inspired by A, how talented they are, and B, how dedicated they are to it. So it's fun to go out there and see it come out of the ground. And then maybe you spend a week or two where you haven't been out there, and then you go back and you can't believe how much progress has been made. And in the 7.5 to 8 months that they've started and been building over there, the progress is astounding. The entire, all the foundations have been in for a while, but now the first deck going all the way out to the foul poles is poured, and the second deck, 60% of it has probably been poured. You're going to start to see what's called bowl steel come out of the ground in the next few months, and you're going to start to see that connectivity of the roof structure start to frame. And you can see it over the fence line now, but it's going to start to be really imposing and really impressive. So I would say that that never disappoints.
That's cool. Opposite question. What's something really hard that most people would never know about?
I guess the answer could be the unknown. You never really know what's going to. It's almost like when you got married, everyone said something's going to go wrong. Just be ready for it. There's always something that's going to go wrong. Something's going to break. Someone, God forbid, somebody gets hurt. Just things that you prepare for, but they still come out of left field. Obviously, the big one for the last project was a national pandemic, and hopefully we never have to go through that again. But there's going to be challenges, and there are going to be things that that cause delays or cause problems. So you can try and mitigate it the best you can. You can try and prepare for it the best you can, but there's going to be some things that occur over the next 24 months that are going to cause us to lose some sleep and cause us to have to pivot on what the actual timeline and plan is. And so that's the part that probably keeps anyone who's working on this project up at night.
All right, let's go back to
facts.
First time since 1909 that the Athletics are going to have their own facility. How does that land on you?
The significance of that is substantial. It's going to manifest itself into growth of the brand, and then the product on the field. We talked earlier about the commitments that John has made, and the baseball folks, David Forst, and the manager, Marc. David's our general manager. They've always had that plan in mind, and the A's organization has always been incredible in terms of identifying talent, whether through the draft or whether through, obviously Moneyball is fairly well known, but identifying talent in ways that were both original or required because of the economic situation. And then unfortunately they weren't necessarily able to retain a lot of that talent. And so you have a certain number of years with these particular players. And then at some point, you have to look at the landscape and say, is it more important to trade that asset now for future assets? And historically, that's what the organization did. And you saw about a 3 to 5 year run that would then be met with a couple years of rebuilding the organization. And they've done that over the last couple of years. Were a couple of tough years on the field, and the trading of a lot of popular players and assets, and that was challenging not just to the fans. Obviously, it's disappointing the fans, but that's tough on the organization. Everybody that's worked there for a long time, and you develop relationships with these players. It's 162 games. It's not 17 games, and you're with these folks 9-10 months of the year. So those relationships are deep, and then those relationships aren't over, but they're not the same when they're gone. But this core of players that David and his team have drafted and developed over the last couple of years is one of the most enviable lineups in all of baseball. We have the rookie of the year, the runner-up rookie of the year, and all this talent that's now been signed for 5, 6, 7, 8 more years. That core gets to stay together. That's a very different way of operating, but it's really exciting if you're a fan, and it's really exciting if you get to be a part of the organization to watch that part of the plan pivot from draft, develop, make some tough decisions to draft, develop, retain, and build that core. So everyone's pretty excited about that.
Marc Badain might be the only person to serve as a team president of 2 major league teams building individual stadiums in the same market.
I don't know. I got to think that that's wrong, but
What if it's not wrong?
I don't know. I guess, thank you for pointing it out. I don't know. I've been very fortunate. We've had a lot of people that have given me these opportunities, and a lot of people that have been instrumental in seeing them get done. So I'll defer the credit.
An important part of Badain's job is to generate the lucrative founding partner sponsorship deals that he realized at the Raider Stadium. What does that mean?
I'll explain. I was curious. You said you read that somewhere.
I read it somewhere.
You don't remember where?
I have to go find the article.
Well, certainly you've been to sporting events. You understand that sponsorship and partnership is a large revenue driver of these buildings. So brands, both established brands and brands looking to get established, look to the exposure and the association with sports teams and facilities as a way to grow their brand. So you'll have a naming rights partner, right? You refer to the stadium as Allegiant. Right? It's Allegiant Stadium. Well, Allegiant is a local company. Maury Gallagher's a friend, and I think if you asked him, he would say that was a very good decision to put his name on this building, and it's over-delivered in terms of metrics and return on investment for it. So we'll have a naming rights partner for the ballpark, and then you start talking about different partnerships that in this market, obviously a lot of the resort corridor partners will want to have a presence in the building and potentially entitle some spaces. So they might pick a particular club and name that club after one of their brands, and then that club becomes an asset that differentiates them from their competitors, and they use for events and use for hospitality or potential business uses. And then there's some of the traditional categories, beer, soda, other food and beverage categories, insurance, banking, certainly some things in online gaming.
Is this like planned internally, or is there like a consultant company that you go to and say, here's our design, give us our naming right?
No, it's actually a really good question. You build it into the design of the ballpark, and then you have to go out and monetize it. In some cases, teams do it themselves with their existing staff and their existing infrastructure. And in some cases, teams hire agencies. There's 3 or 4 agencies that assist teams in that. We've contracted with a company called CAA Sports, led by a gentleman named Paul Danforth out of New York. And they do sports sales for a lot of different properties. They handle F1. So a lot of the sponsorships you see at F1 were negotiated by this group. And so they have a lot of existing relationships in the national space. And so they'll bring a lot of clients here and they'll say, okay, I want to activate my brand in one way, shape, or form. I'm trying to promote this product, and here's a way to go do that. So those are conversations that are happening right now. Those will go up until the stadium opening, and those will continue once the stadium's open. There'll be new sponsorship deals that are being signed, and there'll be deals 5, 7, 10 years down the road that either renew or graduate out, and you replace them with new sponsors. But that's a fun part of the job. I wouldn't say that part makes me giddy, but that's a fun part of doing these projects is finding the right partners.
I was reading this. I'm like, I don't think Marc gets giddy. Do you get? You're not a get giddy kind of guy.
I don't know. You can ask Amy.
That's pretty cool. I was thinking about, I shared with you, and you know this, that I've been involved with trying to get a Jewish community campus built here. And there is, that there's naming, donation kind of a thing. And there is a company, I'm sure there's several, but there's one that they will lay out for you. There's obviously the campus naming, there's the building, each building that's on the campus you can name, different rooms in there. So you write out a plan. I didn't know if there was an agency. That's why I asked about the stadium, and you said yes. So pretty interesting. You talked a lot about this, but I'm going to ask you again. What's one thing you wish people would know about this ballpark?
That's a good one. I'm trying to think of something that I haven't already mentioned. Okay, I'll give you a good one. The renderings you've probably seen show that large glass curtain wall, cable net wall out in center field, pretty much from left field over to about right center field that looks out on the strip. That's going to be one of the most magnificent views in any ballpark. And occasionally you'll see some ballparks that obstruct a lot of the outfield, both the fence and the exterior, with a lot of static signage. And I understand it. I mean, we were just talking about the need for sponsorship revenue, and you have to deliver. We're going to try and do it a little cleaner. We're going to try and make sure that view is preserved, that the sponsorship activation and sponsorship signage is very consistent and very clean and not too intrusive, so that the building still has just a beauty to it and an elegance to it. And it's not necessarily a crowded wall of mixed brands. I think you can look at some buildings that have done that very, very well. You can look at some buildings that probably struggled. There's a lot of digital signage in the building, so that will give us the ability to do these digital takeovers for the sponsors that can be just as effective, and in some cases more effective, because they grab your attention as opposed to the same sign you might see out above the right field fence. So that to me is something that I'm excited to see manifest itself in what the building's going to actually look like.
To go from the picture to physical, that the manifestation, like, you're a construction guy, you've been around this before. For anyone who hasn't, it's a remarkable thing. You stare and pore over these plans and pictures for years, and then you finally see it in real life.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that it's the vision that John had and that Bjarke Ingels designed for him, and that they signed up for, and that it's not necessarily compromised by some other things. the example I often reference is if you've ever watched the U.S. Open, they did a really good job over the years. There's now a lot of digital signage there, but it was always blue and white. And that's all you saw. The Masters was only a couple of key sponsors, and you had to conform from a color and a branding and a font standpoint, right? You can't necessarily get that extreme when you're talking about the number of partnerships and number of deals that you're going to do, but maintaining that clean, elegant, consistent look is something that I think the Jones family did very well in Texas. I think Marc did very, very well at Allegiant. That was important to him, and I think we'll be able to accomplish here too.
Pretty cool. We'll do some rapid fire takeaways.
Go.
Is there an Al Davis saying you love the most or say the most?
We owe a debt.
What does that mean?
I think you could interpret it a number of ways. He was very cognizant of the folks that came before him and the people that built not just the Raider organization, but the NFL. And so he wanted to make sure those folks were taken care of and not left behind. So folks that played a long time ago and didn't make millions of dollars. He was very, very generous with people who needed that help. Marc has done that too. So it was his way of saying, make sure you don't forget those that came before you and built that foundation that you now are the beneficiary of. And I think that holds true in a lot of ways when he was there and then in current day. And
why does this in particular one resonate with you the most?
It's just, to me, it exemplifies a statement of loyalty, a little bit of deference, a little bit of humility. And people get forgotten. They do. They get forgotten, and they shouldn't. There's a lot of people. This market is really good at honoring the people and recognizing the people who have built it. And you hear the same names, and they do a good job of not forgetting those who helped take this city from what it was to what it is and what it will be. But I think when Mr. Davis was talking about it, he meant in the context of the folks that helped build the NFL into the incredible business that it is, the incredible sport that it is, the incredible galvanizing force that it is. So that one always resonated with me.
What is on your list of 1 or 2 must-read books?
Business or pleasure?
Your choice.
From a business standpoint, I always liked Iger's book, Ride of a Lifetime. I had a chance to meet him and work with him very briefly on the project in Los Angeles, and he was just a very impressive individual. And the book's a great read and a lot of good leadership lessons. From a personal standpoint, I got on a Stephen King kick recently, so I just blew through an offshoot book of The Stand and then The Long Walk, which they just made into a movie, and I'm almost done with The Langoliers. So I'll probably move on to something else after that.
Is there a podcast that you don't miss?
Well, I listen to a lot of there's a podcast called The Rewatchables, a guy named Bill Simmons does, where he basically just talks about movies. There's a lot of nostalgia in that. It's probably not the most.
Are you a big movie guy?
Yeah. I mean, I probably watch the same movies over and over again, with thus the rewatchables.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one that if I know the movie and like the movie, I try and listen to it. He's got a pretty good sense of humor. He's my age, and I can just identify with a lot of his jokes and humor.
What's an interest or hobby that recharges you, or something you do just for the joy of it?
I play some tennis. I like tennis. That's probably my hobby right now of choice. That if you were to ask me what I could spend a day doing, that would probably be it.
Have you tried pickleball?
Yeah, I've tried pickleball. I like it.
It's not tennis though.
That's
what my son tells me.
I like tennis more.
How do you manage stress?
I would say nowadays it's a lot easier than it was when I was younger, right? A little less to worry about these days, but I don't know if I do it well. I try and exercise as much as possible. Try and laugh as much as possible. Try and bring levity to situations as much as possible. But sometimes life gets in the way. How do you manage stress?
Exercise. My wife's a marriage and family therapist, so she tells me I'm great at compartmentalization.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the best one.
Got it.
Yeah, there's things that you experience in life, both personally, but also from other wisdoms, like book Man's Search for Meaning. I remember I was working at Banana Republic in college. I'm reading this old magazine called Maxim Magazine. I don't know if you remember that
Sure.
one. There's an article about third world country prostitution, and specifically like kids that get born into prostitution. And if it's a female, she's going to become a prostitute. And they were talking about like the first time she's sold, it's for more money than every other time because now she's a virgin being sold. And I'm reading this kind of a thing, and you think like, what am I really dealing with in my life? Now, there's things that are absolute adversity, but like
What is
you
real
lose
stress?
you lose a client.
Right.
What am I really dealing with? Versus there's things that, so
I guess you'd call that perspective.
perspective, that's a good word for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm good at holding perspective.
Got it.
How do you decide what boards or philanthropic endeavors to get involved with?
There are some that I'm involved with that are a little closer to home than others. Obviously, we talked about the Blitnikoff Foundation, the Ackerman Center, been touched by that, by autism and some friends and family over the years. And so that one is pretty close to home. And I guess it's more, again, I'll use the same terms, like where can I add value, right? If there's a board that just wants my money, it's probably not an idea for me to be on the board. I'm not going to add that much. I can support them. I can try and raise funds. I can try and be a contributor. But if there's something that I can actually add to the organization and their vision, that's probably what makes that decision.
Ending question.
Go ahead.
Act as a futurist.
A futurist?
A futurist.
Okay.
Predict something about Las Vegas over the next 20 years that would surprise most people.
Well, if I were to ask you, what are the two areas in Vegas that we're known for being behind in? I think you would probably say medical and education.
Those are the exact two I would say.
Yeah, those are the two biggest challenges. Those were probably the answer 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. From a medical standpoint, I think that you're starting to see more investment, more involvement, more awareness that needs to improve. This is now, you've been here your whole life. So you've seen it grow from a population of what? A couple 100,000?
Yeah,
I don't
probably.
know how old you are, so I don't want to say it.
I was born in 1980.
Okay.
Since you shared yours, I'll share mine.
45. So I don't know what the population was in 1980. I'm sure it was under a million.
It was definitely under a million, yeah.
So now you're at what, 2.5 million and growing 40,000 a year. So what do we say, 20 years? In 20 years, there'll be 3.3 million people here. We're going to need to fix the medical system here. One project, you talked about the Jewish Community Center. One project I was fortunate to work on when I left the team, when I left the Raiders, was a pediatric hospital. So I started working with the folks at Intermountain who we had done had the relationship with at the practice facility, and they wanted to work on a pediatric hospital. And so I got heavily involved in that for about 18 months and worked on identifying land opportunities. Ultimately, the land is right now over off of Sunset and Durango on the Harry Reid Tech campus. And that was a deal that I was fortunate to work on with Bo Bernhardt and a couple of other folks. And I'm not working for Intermountain anymore, obviously, but I'm on an advisory council. And that project is incredibly important to me. That's a project that anything they ask me to do, I will. If they want me to be on a board, if they want me to raise funds. I remember my middle son saying to me when I presented the opportunity, he goes, well, look, anyone can build a stadium. How many people get to build a pediatric hospital? And that sort of resonated. So
your son said that to you?
My middle son, yeah.
Wow.
Well, he has a different perspective on sports than most kids his age. He's not enamored with it, but he saw the value in that. You've met my wife, Amy. She runs a philanthropic organization called Once Upon a Room, where they go over to Sunrise and they decorate kids' hospital rooms that are going to be there for long stays. When you talk about perspective, you talk about things that actually matter and have an impact, that matters. I think this market is starting to realize that. You saw they announced Wendy and Bill Hornbuckle as essentially the chairs of the philanthropic aspect. Like, you start to do moves like that. You start to get land. You start to involve the people in town that can make that kind of thing happen. that to me is, I don't see how this community continues on its growth and escalation and its worldwide influence and importance without addressing that significantly. And I think you're starting to see that in terms of doctors and clinics and companies and medical office campuses that are getting bigger, relocating here, starting to evaluate having a presence here. And that would be a big step. So I'm hopeful that as a futurist that actually comes to fruition, and I hope to be a part of it.
I hope so too.
Thanks.
Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure. It's good to see you.
You too. Thank you for listening. I would love to hear from you about your takeaways from this episode. Make sure to leave us a comment or leave us a review. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can hear future episodes as they come out. My name is Hayim. Tune in next time.